right when we leave the door, how many hats are you picking up? Sometimes you have pick up so many hats that don't even have your name on it. So slowing down a bit and saying, is this my load to carry? Should I put this hat on? Like, can this wait? Is this not even my responsibility?
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Confab Experience. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hello.
Hi.
Well, on today's episode, we have a very, very special guest. Her name is Tori Seals, and she is a professional therapist for women of color, young and mature. I like how you say mature.
Yes, that's sweet.
And it is. And she focuses on eradicating trauma, developing healthy relationships, improving self-confidence, and decreasing anxiety. So important. And her platform is called Healing with Seals, and it focuses on overall wellness, which includes mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.
So just to get us started, tell us a little bit about why you chose to become an LPC.
Okay, yeah. So why I chose to become a therapist is it's sometimes a little cliche. Like a lot of therapists have this story, but it still is original. Just growing up in all of my friendships, I was like the key person that everyone came to. Even in my family, I always pretty much provided like sound advice, and I was always pretty level headed. And so just going into undergrad and pursuing psychology, which I just loved, and I was always fascinated with the brain. And so I knew like I wanted to just become a bit more and just get my master's in that and become a therapist. So that's a little story of like why I pursued that. And also now that I'm in it, it's so just important to have that representation for, you know, women of color or whomever, just to see someone that looks like you and share some of your story.
Yeah, no, that's super important. Speaking of, sort of, we had an episode in season 1 where we kind of talked about how, 2020 is what it is, and it's sort of getting to a lot of people. And even Michelle Obama had an episode, I can't remember if it was the first or second episode of her podcast, that said she was really actually suffering from a lot of low-grade depression because of the pandemic and racial injustice and all the things going on today. So so tell our listeners how you see counseling as sort of like an effective tool for your overall wellness, really.
Yeah. Well, I always like to say like a lot of times we need to get out of our same area. We can sometimes, let's just be frank, in our families can share this negative speaking type of tendency. So a lot of times we have to relearn and rebuild that thinking process, and that's what therapy can do. Therapy gives you that outlet to learn those new coping skills and learn new ways of thinking, and also can bring out some trauma that you have that is emphasizing these depression inside of you. And like Michelle Obama is saying, this low grade depression, yes, we're all going through it. Everybody is suffering this trauma at the same time, and we're you know, this is new, we're still learning how to navigate that. So therapy is a great space to even share like, I don't know how to handle this. Like, what should I be doing about this? I'm now working at home. How do I handle, you know, not your normal routine? Even heck, when we drive to work and listen to music, you didn't know how much that was like beneficial to you.
That is true.
So even exploring that with somebody, like therapy is a place that you can explore, you know, becoming someone new. If you want to change certain things, therapy has so many different aspects to it that you know you wouldn't know that you would get out of it. So also a safe space. A lot of times we don't have that in our lives to, you know, sometimes we can tell a elder something, and next you know everyone in the family knows. That's not the case at therapy. So you know you can trust that that person, you know, is going to take your information and that's where it's at. So
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Siobhan mentioned the low grade depression, and it feels like a lot of your Instagram posts actually are talking about recharging, especially in this year that we're in. So what advice do you have for somebody who feels like they are, treading water, and what are ways that they can recharge?
Yeah. Often I tell a scenario of this, like right when we leave the door, how many hats are you picking up? Sometimes you pick up so many hats that don't even have your name on it. So slowing down a bit and saying, is this my load to carry? Should I put this hat on? Like, can this wait? Is this not even my responsibility? Because a lot of times we try to save so many, but we have to put ourselves first. At times people think it's selfish, but I think it's contrary to that. We have to look into ourselves and say, that's not my load to carry. So I say start with that and understanding. Stop picking, you got 10 hats on your head and you really only have two. So starting there will be a good place. And then once you figure that out, you'll see like it's a decrease in your anxiety and your stress level. Then I say to add in some deep breathing is always good. I always say like hone in on your coping skills. Once again, to go back, like therapy is great for learning that toolbox, so you can always have something to dig into. And so once you get that going, a lot of stuff can dwindle down.
That is that's great advice. I know for sure I'm always picking up more hats than I need to wear.
Yeah.
And everybody probably can relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like culturally it's been such a like stigma for Black people, African Americans, people of color all together to reach out for help when they feel that overwhelmingness. I know I have definitely had issues with anxiety, which I didn't even like realize it. I just thought it was just my normal regular being, right? And so many people, deal with this and don't ever reach out for help. And, why do you think that is that so many, so many people deal with that kind of that it's so much of a struggle in our community?
One quote that I still always hear is like, what happens in this house stays in this house.
Stays in this house.
Yeah. And so it's so
like a
sad
mantra.
and it's sad that it's still such a strong mantra as that, So I think if we can, we are, but if we can continue dismantling that will be helpful. Which I feel like this millennial and this younger generation they are taking sledgehammers to a lot of things.
That is true. Yeah.
They share and share and share.
Exactly. They're sharing so much. Older generation, like they talking too much, they saying too much, but it really is being helpful and people are seeing like, okay, like maybe it's not as bad as it is. And they're making their own mindsets. If we can continue choosing to say like, I can still belong in this family, but think originally, I think that will be important as well to continue making strides that way. So once again, it just sounds like continue to make a change and be okay with going against the grain that other people may not see it as important.
It's so funny, even at this age, like I still have these moments where I will share something like, and I feel like I'm like, being vulnerable. And then somebody else will be like, me too. Like, I had that same experience. And it just makes me feel better that I opened up. I'm like, why don't I do that more often?
Michelle Obama talked about that on one of her podcasts. Again, not that we're.
I should stop. I should start listening.
It is really good. It really is good.
Right.
But she talked about how sharing is how sharing and being vulnerable, like that's the key to success.
It is.
And like opening up and sharing about how like important that is for you and for other people too.
Yeah.
And I also say like keep having those tough discussions. So if something kind of comes to the topic of therapy, to give yourself a little to dive into it a bit more. It may be a little ruffled if someone is not for it, but keep on having those tough discussions because that's only how we can reap some type of change generationally.
Yeah.
So piggybacking off of that and picking up the hats and things of that nature, one thing that we know is detrimental is like the Black superwoman syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I think we can all agree that that's something that like we'd like to do away with. But how do you even begin to unravel that and delegate, especially when you feel, or when it, and maybe even in truth, you don't have anyone to delegate to? Like, how do you prioritize?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like you said, like picking up those certain hats, we can also just say, I like to say like the pick the top three. So what today needs to be done. A lot of times we like to complete things for the whole week in one day. And that's how we can get super exhausted when we can just do a little bit by little bit. I think that comes from how we've seen probably our mothers, grandmothers doing so much, but they didn't really have the, I would say like probably the knowledge to know like, okay, we don't have to do every single thing in one setting. Yeah. And you talk about like delegating. So I think that top three helps with, I don't have anybody to delegate it to. So how about if I know I'm the only one that can do it, why am I trying to stress myself out and do 10 tasks at once? You know? And I just have to keep on emphasizing, sometimes we pick up things that just aren't ours to carry, so now we're carrying around our mother's stress, we're trying to help her out, or our father's whatever, your aunt, so you're carrying on so many loads, and a lot of times we have to learn boundaries, so boundaries come with, what do I value in myself, what do I respect in myself, and then putting that first and see what you want to pick up.
Boundaries is a big word.
So it is a really big word. And also you said something a little bit earlier about being I can be a member of this family, is what you said, and have original thought.
Yeah.
I think I challenged that a little bit. Uh-oh. No, I know that that's truthful, but if everybody's not on the same journey as you, that could be a very like you almost have to be ready for what that means. Like setting up boundaries also means like being able to being uncomfortable and understanding that people may or may not accept or go with you with those boundaries, especially if it's something, if you're jumping off trying to do something new or not with what the tradition of the family has been. So, I mean, there's a sense of like, you have to be brave, really.
Yeah, it's vulnerability. Brave. Yeah. And like you said, you do have to be prepared to kind of go in isolation or solo, because a lot of times people are set in their ways, and we have to learn to almost like coexist, but still having like a circle around you of what you will and will not do. And I always talk about with boundaries. First, you have to share with that person and be ready for what they may say back, but still be able to hold on to what you believe is valuable to you. So that's the true gift, is still maintaining your top priority is you.
Yeah, for me, sometimes I feel like, especially like when I started going to therapy, I decided I was going to do it, and then it was like I had to do it like by myself first before I shared it with, and then I just like nonchalantly was like, oh yeah, so today at therapy, and like in my family group, and then it was like, oh, okay, like, just to kind of just throw it out there. Sometimes you kind of got to do it on your own, get strong enough in your decision, that it will really rock you.
Exactly. Right. And like with boundaries, that's another emphasis of why therapy is important, because the therapist you and her or whomever you go see for a therapist can write down your boundaries, and she can help you learn how to assert them, learn how to, someone, like when you do something new, it's going to be pushback. Like that's guaranteed. So your therapy session can help you know what to do when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we're all on the same page. We need to go to therapy. Okay. So let's say we all agree on that. Let's say everybody agrees on that. But it's not cheap. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. So if you don't, but all joking aside, if you don't have healthcare or you are underpaid, how are there other creative alternatives, to get the same benefits?
It is. And Well, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, so I know what agencies are like free here, but I'm sure there are free agencies just worldwide. But I know here I also work for, like, I have my own practice, but I work for a nonprofit, and they handle people that have been victims of violence. So that's domestic violence, lost someone to homicide, assault, various things like that. So they get free services. And then it also is places where Moxa and just different areas, sometimes you have to fit that criteria. Although there is places where, like, if you dial 211, I believe this is worldwide, and you can talk to a crisis counselor, and that's free. You can also text, I think it's home to 741-741. You can text somebody for free. So that's, it may not be a weekly thing, but that is something, if you are in a crisis or you need someone right then and there, that is available. But if you are qualified for that criteria for a certain agency, then you can have weekly services free of charge for individually, in a group, or in a family. So those things are available for you. And also, YouTube is a wonderful place. I won't say it replaces, one-on-one therapy, but it is some things that you can do on there. Like on my YouTube channel, I also have like coping skills. I give you resources as well on there. So, and I know other therapists do as well. And I say reading, I am a CBT therapist. So it's a handbook, I think, like CBT for Dummies, and it just breaks it down very simplistic for people to just try to put them on their own selves into like a therapy session. So it's a lot of resources out here. So you kind of have to search. Oh, in churches, a lot of churches give you free services. If you want that from that type of setting. So you have to do a little digging. You may have to have a certain criteria, but it is definitely out there. And a lot of therapists have sliding scale fees, or some do monthly pro bono work. So it kind of have to kind of ask around.
Research.
Yeah, that's true. There is a lot of things out there that some people you just don't know about. You got to look around and find it, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you started therapy, you're in therapy, you've been in therapy. And one of the things we kind of get stuck in is like, is there a time frame? Like, how do I know it's working? How do I know it's done? Like, what should I be looking for? Is this like kind of something maybe we should look at, like a maintenance thing? Like I should always checking in.
Right. I think how you know it's working is, how's your thinking? Are you thinking differently, or are you the same? I think that's a real key component. That's a real foundational work, I would say. And therapy can be looked at as maintenance for some. It depends on what you're going to therapy for. So, like I said, I'm a CBT therapist, so that's cognitive behavioral therapist, and I can also do brief CBT, so that's like 6 to 8 sessions max. But that's for someone if they a relationship problem, that's something minute. This is really small things, but if you come in for like domestic violence or some type of trauma, I definitely went and do like 6 to 8 sessions. So it's all just person by person. But I would recommend, if it is like maintenance, go back to that same therapist, because if you were just coming in for one session, I would be like, I would want to know you more to really see that I'm helping you, So if you're going to do that, go to the same therapist that you've been working with. So, and then also, if therapy is working, is internally, because we can feel the stress, the heaviness of stress. So feel your body.
So true.
How migraines, like how internally, how are you? So your body will tell you exactly how to answer that.
So true.
Wow. Never thought about it that way, I guess. I always would anticipate that like the therapist would be like, okay, you're done. You're good. You can go now.
Here's your diploma.
Stick around.
Sometimes that can happen, but no.
Okay. Well, speaking of communicating with your therapist, tell our listeners where they can find you if they would like some sessions, some advice. You mentioned a YouTube channel. Where can they find you, follow you, pub yourself?
Okay. Yeah, they can find me at Counseling Heals with Seals, SEALS.com. You can contact me. I have a book me page right on my website, also on Instagram at Healing with Seals. You can DM me for a session, or you can click a link in my bio and you can book a session right there. Also on YouTube at Counseling Heals with Seals. I post every week on Wednesday. And I actually have a new post coming up this Wednesday, another meditation for nighttime. So you can find me at all of those places.
Well, cool.
That's really cool. Well,
thank you, Tori, so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, ladies. Yeah.
So much good information. I feel better already.
For sure. Thank you guys for having me.
Sure, our pleasure. And listening audience, look Tori up. Ask her any questions you may have. And we hope that you had a great time on the episode, learned a lot. And we hope that everyone has a confabulous day.
Continue the experience on our social media handles at The Confab Experience.